Hi people, Marino Ravenberg here again as always and as usual. As you can tell from the header of this video, this is going to be similar to an article I wrote in terms of the subject matter or the topic at hand, the topic that I'm going to discuss, but from a different vantage point. Years ago I did an article as well as a video in 2018 on the occult world, in which I essentially discuss by the way, you can find that video linked to the end screen or in the end screen at the end of this video, of course, or in the description below. You'll find the link to the article in the description below. Yeah, anyways, I discussed back then in a nutshell that people that have an interest in occultism possess or have a good deal of baggage and negativity, etc. And essentially I sum up what the occult community on a global or at a global level is like. But in this video, I'm going to discuss things from a different vantage point, from a commercial vantage point, as the header gives away. So basically, from a neutral person's point of view, but not opinionated in terms of facts. Okay, so a factual point of view, a POV, if you will, and in a more commercial and/or industrial way, just looking at the market overall. And it's pretty much the same thing, so I'm going to start right off the bat by saying that it's the same thing, okay? Even when doing so, the way I just described, you'll still obviously come across nothing but negativity for the most part. People that have an interest in the occult as consumers, essentially, so for example, they buy something from a spellcaster, etc., they lack proper etiquette, to say the least. I've done 2 separate videos on this in the past. Usually these people, bear in mind, I'm speaking in general, statistically. I'm not talking about my own clientele. Let that be very clear. I'm not talking about my own clientele. I'm simply discussing this matter in general. When I say these people lack etiquette, I mean in general. So statistically, at a global or on a global level, people that, occult consumers, if you will, like I said, occult consumers, they simply lack proper etiquette, to say the least. The majority of us are familiar with, for example, if you work somewhere, you work in retail or you work anywhere. The majority of us are familiar with customers, for example, that come to buy something if you work in retail, a t-shirt or something, and these people will try to beg for a discount. They'll do this, they'll do that. The choosing beggar types, essentially. Those that already have little to nothing to begin with, and yet they have the audacity to actually to actually be picky, essentially. Okay, you're being picky where you don't have the right or even the room or leeway to be picky. Those kinds of people, pretty much the worst clientele you can think of. Yeah, this is what statistically, unfortunately, the majority of occult consumers are also like. People that have an interest in buying occult services in general, statistically all around the world. The majority of these people, similar to the community as a whole, as I stated in that article and or video back then, they lack proper etiquette, to say the least. An example that I can give, for example, is a guy that buys a spell from a spellcaster. For example, just any spellcaster in the world. Does not matter. Location and all that stuff doesn't matter. A guy buys something from a spellcaster. Okay, the spell was worth like $100. And the guy wants to play 21 questions. The guy literally is asking, like, literally 21 questions. Imagine that. Hey, what does this do? What does that do? What can I expect? How about this? How about that? And it just goes on multifold. Again, the person is biting off way more than he can chew. And from the vantage point of the spellcaster, you can see how it comes off, right? You can see what the deal is. And you're wondering to yourself, wow. Again, I refer back to my example working in retail. Imagine someone working in retail. You work in retail. You either own a boutique, a clothing store, apparel, you name it, or you work in that boutique as a general manager. You see a customer come by. The person comes by default 5 or 6 times a month, and the person just looks around and never buys anything. And the person has the audacity to ask like 10 questions about 5 separate lines of clothing. Doesn't matter, pants, etc. Doesn't matter. Person takes a pair of pants. The person is like, hey, what fabric is this made out of? When was this made? Blah 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 blah, etc., etc., etc. And the person does that like I said, the person does that 5 times a month. The person stays in a store in your store for an hour, and the person keeps doing that. Would you not want to throw that person out? Would you not want to say, hey, listen, sir or madam, you've come by on several occasions, and I've already told you, you've already browsed enough. I'm sorry, man. You've already browsed and looked around enough, but you keep coming by, and you've already been in the store a multitude of occasions. Okay, over the course of the past 2-3 months, you've been here a dozen times, literally, and yet you haven't purchased anything. As the general manager, I would put that person in their place. Okay, and any sensible person would. Again, what's the first thing that comes to mind when thinking about these kind of customers? Exactly, choosing beggar. You're thinking about some customer that can't afford your clothing, or isn't willing to spend the money on it, or is being stingy about it, and yet the person has the audacity to commit these kind of actions, to behave the way they do. That's also what people who have an interest in the occult are like. Now, obviously, again, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you should just throw money around left and right. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. But common sense tells you that you can't, for example, if you're someone that hasn't spent a lot of money, then there's a limit to how far you can go in terms of being entitled as a customer. You can ask basic questions, etc. for a regular order at any store worldwide, but you can't possibly expect to spend like $500 and then you expect the customer service to weigh you on hand and foot, like you're a six-figure customer, if you will, or a customer that spends 6 figures on the business annually. That's my point. Common sense tells you this. When I go to a store, I do the same thing. If I'm a regular somewhere, then I know that, hey, you know what? I have the right. Common sense tells you I have the right to ask like 5 questions as opposed to the usual one. Or I have the right to ask for a discount because I am a regular customer. I spent like $10,000 on this business. You know, it's deserve it. That's my point. It's deserve it. Now I'm just looking around me miscellaneously. It's deserve it, not to get distracted or anything. And yeah, common sense tells you this. But if you go to a clothing store, I go to an Adidas store, and I spend like $100 on a tracksuit, an Adidas tracksuit, no problem. But I'm already seeing myself do that, and then ask the guy literally like 10 questions. When was this tracksuit made? What year? Okay. What fabric is it made out of? What state was this made in? If I live in the US, or if I live anywhere else in the world, what region was this made in? You know, the who, the what, the where, the why, and the how. No. You as a customer, what you spent is not worth all of those questions. But common sense tells you this. But unfortunately, people that again, occult consumers, people that have an interest in the occult, as well as people that want to buy occult stuff, statistically, they lack common sense for a good portion, or by a good margin, as well as a bunch of other things that the average person would consider having common sense. They're the choosing beggar types. They're the types that they're like the beggars alongside the road that beg for food. Please give me some food. I have nothing to eat. And then when you actually give them food, they have the audacity to be picky and or selective, as in, oh, you gave me McNuggets. I don't want nuggets. Fuck this, bro. Or you give a beggar money? Okay, $5. What? I only accept 20s. How are you so cheap? Literally a choosing beggar. Okay, you already don't have a leg to stand on. You don't reserve the right. You don't have the right in any way, shape, or form to be begging for a leg. You don't have a fucking leg to begin with. You need to shut the hell up and be grateful for what's been given to you to begin with. That's my point. And unfortunately, it's the same thing for occult consumers, people that consume occult services, occult content, or occult wares. Okay, that's the case globally, statistically. So that's it from the vantage point of occult consumers. So basically, consumerism in the occult community or world. And now it's time to hop on over to the other end of the spectrum, occult vendors like me, for example. Not that I'm discussing me again, I'm just speaking in general, statistically. I'm an exception all around. By global standards, I'm like 1 in a billion. Even 1 in a million doesn't cut it with me. I'm 1 in a billion, even if I say so myself. But customers have told me this, or people have told me this. That's not coming from me itself. So yeah, that's self-explanatory. Anyways, now, On the other end of the spectrum, so on the other side of the hypothetical pond, you've got occult vendors, people that sell occult services and wares. Unfortunately, statistically, the majority of these people are scammers. Now, I'm going to get to that in the end as to why that's the case. Point is, they're scammers. There's not a lot to say when it comes to occult vendors. They're scammers. They're people that that just scam their clientele. They promise things that they don't deliver on in terms of energetic exchange. They are unreliable, to say the least. Generally speaking, they tick all the check boxes. I repeat, they tick all the check boxes when it comes to shady and or outright deceptive behavior. They conceal their real name. They don't show their face. They have no references. You name it. They have nothing. Okay, not all of these are mandatory, of course. These are optional. As a matter of fact, none of these are mandatory. But still, in general, if I as an occult consumer came across someone that is completely anonymous, I have no idea where the person lives, what the person looks like, what the person's name is, nothing. The person either uses a pseudonym, a nickname, or an alias, just overall in terms of their presence, then I'm reluctant to buy anything from you if you're a vendor like that. I mean, imagine buying a t-shirt or a pair of pants from a store that has no physical address, not even a virtual one, online, a store that has no name, the brand even has no name. Seriously, would you even buy that? Exactly. No sensible person would buy that, including me. Are you kidding me? Not in a million years. I'm not going to buy a shirt from an unknown store, unknown brand. The shirt itself or the pants itself or the suit as a whole has no emblem on it, has nothing on it. It nothing. Nada, zip. Nadia. I mean, come on. It's a no-brainer. From a store that has no contact information, no address, no nothing. Or just dubious contact information, as in only email or something like that. Are you kidding me? No. Go fuck yourself. Bluntly put, go fuck yourself. I'm not buying that. I'd rather throw the money away. That's my point. It's all about, there is no credibility from occult vendors. The same thing with occult vendors. There's no credibility from them in general, statistically, globally. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I said, with occult vendors, nothing else comes to mind. There's not a lot to say when it comes to occult vendors. People that offer occult services. Again, I'm also going to link another article in the description on how to recognize a scammer, as well as the video that I recorded about it years ago. I think also 2018 or 17. You can also find that linked in the end screen as well as the description below. The article will be in the description. The video will be linked to the end screen again. So yeah, nothing else comes to mind in relation to occult vendors. And yeah, now here it comes. Since I've summarized everything, we've taken a look at things both from the vantage point of consumers as well as vendors. Then you can see for yourself, that the entire world is just messed up. On the one hand, people that buy occult stuff are choosing beggary in nature. I repeat, choosing beggary. And on the other hand, occult sellers or occult vendors are very prone to being deceptive, shady, and or outright illegal in terms of operations or operational method of working, modus operandi. And yeah, if you put the two together, you can see that the world is a mess. It's like a freaking battlefield. It's that's why occultism in general, anything that comes close to clairvoyancy, anything of a psychic nature, a paranormal nature, is very notorious compared to other industries. It's one of the industries that the average person really doesn't want anything to do with unless it's absolutely necessary. And yeah, this accounts for anyone you can think of, financial institutions, anything or anyone that you can think of, payment processors, etc. Any person that knows payment processors, like, can't really give an example, never mind, it's also not necessary, you guys know what I'm talking about. Any payment processor that you look up globally, that offers payment processing for businesses globally, etc., will not work with anything that comes close to psychic services. Doesn't matter whether these are readings, what kind of readings they are, regardless, it doesn't matter. Tarot readings, astrological, it does not matter. Payment processors in general do not want to work with any person that offers psychic services, any occult seller, anything that resembles occultism. No, it's a big no-no for them. They have a prohibited list, a list of prohibited items, that's what they call it, LPIs. Alcohol, firearms, stuff like that, you name it. But with occultism, the reason they don't offer any of these things are because of how unreliable the market is. There's a high chargeback rate, etc. The average transaction for a payment processor between an occult consumer and an occult vendor would be, for example, an occult consumer buys something from vendor. Consumer is of the opinion that he or she got scammed and now wants their money back. You name it. As a payment processor, it's not even remotely feasible, or it's not even remotely profitable, because you lose money, hypothetically speaking, as far as I know. I'm not sure about this in terms of how they operate, but as far as I know, you lose money in general for every transaction that ends up in a chargeback, as in, hey, you know, you're hosting an occult seller, someone buys something from them, they want their money back, etc. Imagine if 10 people do that. You have 10 transactions from one vendor that you support or whom you support, and in 1 month there have been 10 chargebacks. I'm just giving an example, obviously. Just an example with the numbers. There have been 10 chargebacks, as in people wanted their money refunded 10 times. It's negative, doesn't matter where you look at it. If you're an establishment, a financial institution, and you support a business like that, an occult business, you're going to think to yourself, nah, this does not look good, you know. The person, this seller, he's not doing well. Look at that. In 1 month, 10 refunds have been requested, 8 of which have been approved. The other 2 are still processing, or they're still being disputed, blah, 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 blah. Usually these processors also have a dispute policy. Not all of them, some of them do. You name it, okay? There's a high chargeback rate, and they openly state this. There's a high chargeback rate. That's why they don't support these kind of businesses. The world is a muddy world. It's honestly, you can put it almost on equal footing with crime, with anything shady, anything illegal. That's how they categorize it, and that's why they don't do it. Okay, if both vendors as well as consumers were honest, then the market would look different entirely. That's why you've got specific payment processors, I remember, because I did my research back in the day, that support psychic services. But these are largely unknown. They're processors you've never heard of, etc. Not that discredits them in any way. I'm just saying, okay, I have never worked with one of these. It's just not necessary. Besides, the majority of them that I noticed were in the US. Or they were American-based or Canadian-based, for example. Yeah. But that's why. So it's bad all across the board if you're a payment processor. Okay? This person, this seller of us that we represent or that we support or whom we support has nothing but chargebacks. Only 1 out of 10 transactions go through successfully, and we profit off of that. Not to mention the fact that it also gets a bad reputation, you know, because before you know it, your payment processing company will be known as a cesspool filled with scammers, etc. Blah 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 blah, and it just builds an overall bad reputation on the global market. That's what I'm talking about. So yeah, that's why in the business world, occultism falls under one of the prohibited items for the majority of financial institutions. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap things up now. Anyways, I'm gonna close off by simply saying that the reason for why the majority of occult vendors, it's cause and effect. The reason for why the majority of occult sellers or vendors are scammers is because the consumers themselves are beyond worthless, honestly. Again, statistically, not every consumer is like that. The consumers as a whole are just bluntly put, crudely put, beyond worthless. They lack any kind of common decency when it comes to buying things whatsoever. Okay, they're pretty much the worst clientele, or one of the worst types of clientele you can ask for. They're choosing beggar types. These types, primarily, statistically, globally, just like the occult community, people that have an interest in anything occult related as a whole. Again, I need to remind people, I'm not talking about my clientele. Like I said, I'm completely different. I'm simply referring to the occult world from a third person perspective. Yeah, or a first person perspective, not first, third, whatever. In any case, I'm simply spectating, okay, and everything I'm saying is factual data or factual based on my point of view, okay, not my opinion, factual point of view. But I'm a separate entity altogether. The reason I'm mentioning this is because I don't want any customer of mine to feel like I stepped on their toes. But yeah, it's a matter of whom the shoe fits, honestly. The majority of my customers are absolutely normal and nothing wrong with them in general. I'm just kidding. Nothing wrong with them. Yeah, anyways, it's simply cause and effect. People that have an interest in occult consumers, people that want to buy occult services, they're the ones that are essentially prompting occult sellers to be scammers. I mean, what do you expect? If again, it works with supply and demand and supply. If the supply is dubious, then don't expect if the demand is dubious in nature, don't expect the supply to be not to be dubious. How can it be anything else? If you, for example, have a customer base, a target or focus group that misbehaves, then it automatically breeds sellers that will also adopt the same mentality. Bluntly put, again, the majority of occult sellers or people that sell occult wares are scammers, or they're shady and stuff like that. It's because the clientele is like that. I mean, place yourselves in the shoes of someone that sells something, right? You sell something and you're like an occult seller. You sell spells, you sell readings, you sell whatever, doesn't matter. You sell all of this. I mean, put yourselves in the shoes of someone like that. You sell that kind of stuff. You get customers, the likes of which I described, the choosing beggar types. All they do is look around, they never buy anything, or they ask you way too many questions, or they try to screw you over by asking you for a discount, or they want to pay as little as possible, or they're of the opinion that you're way too expensive, or this or that. All they can do is moan and groan and bitch and complain. Will you not automatically, even if you're a softie, will you not automatically become mentally rigid and hard and become a hard ass and hey, listen, if you want to order something, take your shit and get out? You're going to become completely apathetic to any sympathy whatsoever. Any sympathy you had will immediately go out the door. And the thing is that occult vendors take it one step further. Okay, let's just say some of these, maybe roughly estimated 50% of them, my intuition is telling me. This is just superficially, I could be wrong. But generally speaking, no. 50% of people out there, occult sellers, they possess some level of legitimacy, at least, at a minimal rate. So they know how to cast spells, they know how to do basic stuff when it comes to occultism. But the occult sellers are thinking to themselves, why the fuck would we bother? I mean, what gratefulness or appreciation do we get? We don't get anything from customers. All customers want is free stuff, or they want cheap stuff, or they want hypothetically speaking, $500,000 worth of results, $500,000 worth of results for only like $5,000, or they want $1,000 worth of results for only $10, because yeah, that's unfortunately what occult sellers can be like. They have unrealistic expectations. I always tell customers or would-be customers, you get what you pay for in terms of energy. You get what you pay for. I repeat, you get what you pay for. Don't expect that. The same way you go to a grocery store, you pay market price for the item that you bought. It's the same thing. But yet you still have them, and they want like the world for only like $1,000. They want like a car worth of results, a $25,000 car for only like a measly $500-600. So the person wants to pay you $500-600. That's the viewpoint of an occult seller and a potential client. And that client says, hey, you know what, $600, and the person wants all their life problems solved. Okay, solve all of my issues for me, solve this for me. I have so many problems in my life, please fix all of them. And then the person gets upset when they have the audacity to get upset when you don't, when, for example, you only tackle a couple of issues, despite the fact that you told them, mind you. And they're going to say, oh, you scammed me, okay, I want my money back, or I want this back, I want this back. Well, tough shit. That kind of attitude makes it so that you've got like, as an occult seller, I'm placing myself in the shoes of a seller like that. You're going to do this. You know, I'm gonna flick you off. Fuck you. No. That's why occult sellers primarily become dishonest. And they say to themselves, who gives a shit, you know? Our potential clients or our market, our focus group, these guys are a bunch of fucking beggars and miscreants and parasites that literally want stuff for free, or they want to buy like a pair of original Nike shoes for only $1. They're the choosing beggar type, so why would we be honest? So what we're going to do, we're simply going to scam them. End of story. And that's how they become scammers, or that's how they become shady and whatnot. And I'm not condoning it under no circumstance, but as a figure of speech, I understand where they're coming from. I can see where they're coming from. I'm not condoning it. It doesn't matter what you say or do. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how horrible someone is. That does not condone you committing a crime towards them. Your boss can be an asshole at work. It doesn't matter whether he's the biggest asshole on earth. That doesn't give you the right to simply say, hey, I'm going to throw a bomb at the place, I'm going to plant a C4, or I'm going to rob the place, etc. No, and again, no. It says something about you. But we live in a world in which people, the majority of people, have at best questionable morals. So you can see why occult sellers become scammers, even if they were legit. They're going to say, nah, who gives a rat's ass, you know? Well, why would I bother? I mean, no. It's just, again, the entire market is a mess. It's a mess. One hell of a mess. Absolute mess. And, yeah, the entire market is just a mess. So you can see it's cause and effect, okay? One group triggers a reaction or prompts a reaction from the other group, and it just keeps going up and down like a ping pong ball. Cause and effect and cause and everything. So yeah, that's why, honestly. And I'm pretty much done here as well. Let me know if you have anything to add, viewers. You know what to do as usual. I'll hear it in the comment section if you have anything to say. Any remarks or any comments, etc. If I have anything that I forgot, I'll simply do a pin post. I'm just going to post on my own in the comment section. I'm going to pin it up top. Bye bye.